The story begins in 1878, deep in the rugged lands of the Montana Territory, a place where justice was written in gunfire and blood. Here lived a man once whispered about in every saloon and outlaw camp, Colton Briggs. In his prime, he was the deadliest hitman who ever lived, a man whose aim never missed, whose name sent fear through hardened men. But time had changed him. Because of one woman, his wife, Ruth, Colton buried that violent past and built a quiet life. He now ran a small grocery shop, tended a modest farm, and spent every day protecting the most precious thing he had, his 12-year-old daughter, Brooke. His world had become simple: the farm, the store, and his family. But under that calm surface still burned the instincts of the killer he once was. One cool morning, Colton rode with Brooke to school. Their bond was close yet distant, both quiet, serious, and restrained. Brooke had inherited her father's composure, his icy calm. When they reached the schoolhouse, they learned the teacher was sick and classes were canceled. So, with nowhere else to go, Brooke accompanied her father to the general store. "Morning, Mr. Jeffers. Morning, Mr. Briggs," the locals greeted, unaware of the legend that once lived behind that polite smile. Back home, Ruth was doing laundry in the yard when the sound of approaching hooves broke the silence. A group of men rode in, 4 strangers. Their leader, James, had sharp eyes and a cold grin. With him were Boots, a wiry man with cruel humor, Mike, a broad-shouldered brute, and Eustace, still somewhere on the road behind them. They claimed to be travelers looking for directions. Ruth, polite but cautious, pointed them toward the next town. But as their questions grew personal, she sensed something was wrong. James's gaze wandered toward the barn, where he noticed a saddle engraved with the name Colton Briggs. At that moment, his smirk widened, and his men fell silent, fear flickering in their eyes. Ruth tried to retreat, but the men stepped closer, surrounding her. Realizing the danger, she fled into the barn and locked herself inside. "You don't know what you've started," she warned from behind the door. "You've woken the devil himself." But James only laughed. Hours later, Colton and Brooke returned home. They found their yard filled with lawmen and townsfolk. The sheriff, pale and uneasy, approached them. His voice trembled as he delivered the news. Ruth was dead, murdered. For a moment, Colton said nothing. His face showed no tears, only cold silence. During the funeral, his friend Frank tried to offer comfort. He told Brooke about her father's past, how Colton had once been a ruthless killer who struck fear into everyone before Ruth's love changed him. Brooke listened, but her eyes stayed dry. "Are you a good man?" she asked. Frank sighed. "He is now," he answered softly. After the mourners left, Colton stood alone by the grave, sorrow etched deep in his face. Inside the barn, he found a message scrawled on wood, a taunt from the killers. That was all he needed. His vengeance had begun. Frank tried to stop him, urging him to let the law handle it, but Colton no longer cared. He burned his house to the ground, erasing the past, the pain, and the peace he'd once known. As the flames rose, Brooke stood beside him, silent but determined. "This was Mama's horse," she whispered. "Yeah," Colton muttered. "They killed mine." The next morning, father and daughter rode out together. Their hearts were heavy, but their purpose clear. Meanwhile, miles away, the gang regrouped. James's men argued. Some wanted to flee farther south, but James refused. He wanted Colton to come for them. He wanted revenge. Elsewhere, Frank and his sheriffs pursued the gang but fell into an ambush. Bullets ripped through the air. Men fell screaming. Frank fought back fiercely, but most of his men were cut down. James's gang escaped into the hills, shaken but alive. At dusk, Colton and Brooke stopped to rest. Suddenly, distant gunfire echoed. Colton's instincts flared. "Get up," he ordered quietly. They mounted their horses and moved on. Later, they spotted a lone traveler. Colton needed his horse, so he told Brooke to pretend she was hurt and crying. Though awkward, she forced herself to cry, drawing the man closer. When he dismounted to help, Colton struck, swift and silent. Not long after, Colton crossed paths with Frank again, who had survived the ambush. Frank warned him that vengeance would destroy what little humanity he had left, but Colton's mind was set. "I'll find them," he said coldly, "and I'll kill anyone who stands in my way." Frank finally revealed the truth. The gang was led by James Mallister. He and his 3 men were heading toward Santa Rosa, a small border town near Mexico. With that, Colton saddled up, borrowed Frank's horse, and rode into the night. Meanwhile, James's gang reached their hideout. Inside, piles of Mexican pesos lay stacked high. Though his men grumbled, James assured them the money would make them rich once they crossed the border. He also admitted something else. He wasn't just running from Colton. He was waiting for him. By nightfall, they arrived in Santa Rosa. James ordered Eustace to guard the city gate while the rest rested in a hotel. That night, beneath a blanket of stars, Colton and Brooke camped in the desert. He finally spoke openly about his past. How he had been a debt collector, a killer without mercy or emotion. "I never cried," he said. "Never laughed. Until your mother." Brooke listened in silence, eyes fixed on the fire. She promised she would be strong, and that she too would not cry until justice was done. The next morning, Colton began teaching her to shoot. The shotgun was heavy, too powerful for her hands, so she switched to a pistol and hit the target dead center. A hint of pride flickered across Colton's face. In Santa Rosa, tension simmered. Eustace complained that he'd been left on watch all night while the others slept. James ignored him. "Get ready," he said. "He's coming." That afternoon, Colton and Brooke reached the outskirts of town. "Go in first," he told her. "Find them." Brooke walked into Santa Rosa's dusty streets, entered a store, and casually asked about 4 strangers. But as she stepped outside, she was grabbed. James and his men had been waiting. They saw her saddle and instantly knew. She was Colton's daughter. James smiled cruelly. "Well, if it isn't the devil's blood." He revealed his secret. He was Jimmy Mallister, the son of a thief Colton had gunned down 20 years earlier. Ever since that day, he had dreamed of revenge. Now, at last, he would have it. Colton, realizing Brooke was gone, rode into town. Mike spotted him, but before he could raise his rifle, Colton's bullet found its mark. Mike dropped instantly. Boots charged next, gun blazing. Their shootout echoed through the alleys until Colton outsmarted him, striking from the shadows. Hearing the chaos, James dragged Brooke into the street, shouting for Colton to surrender. Seeing his daughter at gunpoint, Colton stepped out, lowering his weapon. "You killed my father," James snarled. "Now I'll kill yours." The final gunfight erupted in a storm of bullets and dust. Colton moved like a ghost, deadly and precise. But even he wasn't invincible. A shot tore into his chest. He fell to one knee, gasping. James laughed, believing he'd finally won. Brooke cried out, her first tears. But with his last breath, Colton raised his revolver and fired one final shot, straight through James's heart. Silence. Both men fell. Moments later, Frank and the remaining sheriffs arrived. They found Brooke kneeling beside her father's body, trembling. Though the law branded Colton a murderer, Frank refused to let them treat him like one. "He was a good man," he said quietly. "He just couldn't escape his past." He buried Colton beside Ruth, beneath the wide Montana sky. Before leaving, Frank handed Brooke a small bag of money recovered from James's loot. "Use it to rebuild," he told her gently. "Your father wanted you to live, not to follow his road."
End the movie. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other recaps and subscribe for more content. And leave comment below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.